What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be doing a full in-depth review of Dorney Park's new for 2024 coaster, Iron Menace. Now, I got to experience Iron Menace on Sunday on April 28th, and it was definitely a very, very nice ride. I got 5 rides on it, so I could say that I probably have a pretty good preference on how the ride is. Now, I am going to talk about a lot of things about the ride and even just the theming itself, because the theming is spectacular. It is definitely the best theming I've ever seen on a coaster, especially very different from other theming at Dorney Park. It's a whole steel yard area with Dr. McTavish, and it's a very, very nice theming that you definitely were not expecting for Dorney Park. So I am going to go through like the experience when you get in the station and just the queue and the ride itself, obviously. When you're first walking up to the ride itself, you can definitely tell that the music has changed, the theming, everything around that area of the park has changed to fit in with the theming of the Steel Yard and Mr. McTavish. So it's very, very cool. They even changed a restaurant place to Iron Mill to fit in with Iron Menace. They changed the seating area for the theming. They have a gift shop for Iron Menace. It is super, super cool. Like I was saying earlier, the theming for this ride is really, really good. Definitely, like I was saying, definitely the best theming I've ever seen. When you're first walking into the queue, they have that big McTavish sign, and they have so much theming in the queue. They have a bunch of steel yard theming. They even have this PA Paranormal van in the queue itself, so that when you're waiting in line, you're not bored out of your mind just sitting there. And luckily, you can have your phones or just whatever you need, because there is cupboards. You don't have to buy lockers, which is very, very nice. Pretty much every coaster at Dorney, you do not have to buy lockers, so I would think that is really, really awesome. So you can still be on your phone. Never bring your phones on rides, but you can definitely have it throughout the queue line so you're not bored out of your mind. Now, I didn't show this in my vlog, but they even have a extended queue line, which is over all the way to the other side, and they have that too. I'm guessing if it gets really, really long, they have the extended queue line. And anyways, when you get up the stairs, because it's a stair queue line too, and you get to the grouping person, so the grouping operator will put you in either the middle row, the back row, or the front row. For my first ride, I actually got the front row, which I was actually pretty surprised about it. I was definitely happy with that, and definitely had a super, super good ride. Now, when you get on the ride, they do have the vest restraints, which no one likes, and you also notice that it is 7 across. It is an odd number of seats across. From what I know, the only dive coaster that's also 7 across is Dr. Diabolical's Cliffhanger at Six Flags Fiesta Texas, but from what I know, that's the only 2 coasters that have an odd number of seats across, but there could be other ones, but that's the only ones I know. Now, when the gate restraint's been locked and checked, and obviously with all visual scans, you will see that the gates will open, which is really, really cool. They even themed the gates to the steel yard, and then you go up that lift hill, 160-foot tall lift hill. It's actually a super steep lift hill, which is actually kind of surprising, but you would definitely feel that steepness. And then it's actually a pretty fast lift hill too. When you get to the top of the lift hill, I like how this one just goes right into the dive drop. It doesn't turn before the drop, so I think that I like how they added that, so it's kind of just like you're not waiting. And then once you get to the top of the lift hill, you get a spectacular view of Dorney Park. To your left, you have Steel Forest. To your right, you have Possessed Spike. It is just super, super cool. And then you go down that 95-degree drop, which is insane. You actually get some pretty good airtime, to be honest. Not ejector, but floater airtime, I would say. Then you go into that Immelman, which is really, really fun. I also like how that Immelman is right over the pathway, so that you can get some really, really good off-ride footage. On this inland, you will feel a lot of G-forces. I grayed out super hard on this inversion. It was a super intense part of the ride. And then after that, you go into the second element of the ride, which is the zero-G roll. It's a pretty good zero-G roll. It's as normal as any other zero-G roll. I mean, it's on a dive coaster, so it's really, really cool. It's much different than Valraven's zero-G roll. Valraven's zero-G roll has a lot of hang time, and this one is pretty fast, so it's not as intense, I would say, but it's still a pretty good element of the ride. And then you, of course, go into probably the most noticeable element of this coaster is the inclined or tilted loop, and this is the first incline loop on any dive coaster, so it is really, really cool. You go through this element ridiculously fast, so it is a super intense element. It is really, really nice. And then after that, you go into the final inversion of the ride, which is the corkscrew. It's a normal corkscrew. It's not the best element of the ride, but it's also not the worst. So I would say that it's a pretty good element, but it's not the best. And then after that, you go through kind of like a mini helix, and then you go into the brakes. Now, a lot of people were saying that there is a jolt right between the brakes, and I will actually get into that farther in the video, but I can say that it's not super noticeable. You can notice it, but it's not as noticeable as you would say if you saw an odd ride reaction to it. Now, I'm sure you guys are all wondering what row is the best. Now, like I said, I got to ride it 5 times, so I got to ride front, middle, and back. I can definitely say that, in my opinion, my favorite is the front. It's definitely smoother than the back. The back is definitely a little bit rougher. You can definitely notice that being and ride a little bit more. And then the middle is just the middle. It's kind of a mix between the front and the back. I definitely like the middle, but it's not as good as the front, definitely. I like it better than the back because it's a little bit less rough, but I think the back definitely has a better air time on the drop. But it's still a super good ride no matter what row you're in. Now, I will say if you sit on the outside seat, it will be a little bit rougher than you sit in the dead middle. Like I said, say if you're in the front row, since this coaster has an odd number of seats across, if you sit in the middle, you are actually in the dead middle. It is a really, really cool experience because the track aligns with your feet perfectly. So if you want to get that experience once, definitely try it out. Now we're going to talk about what you guys are also probably wondering about is the smoothness of the ride. Like I said, it does have a little bit of a beat and rattle, but it is definitely not as rough as what you can probably would think it was. Like, I thought it was going to be rougher than it was because from the POVs and the on-ride reactions that I saw, it was definitely a little bit rougher than other dive coasters that I was seeing. Now, I will say that everyone's talking about that jolt at the end of the ride. When you're actually on that ride, you do notice it. It's not like an unnoticeable part of the ride, but it's definitely not as like jolty as it looks in the POVs and the on-ride reactions. It is still a pretty good part of the ride. I think that the roughness and kind of the B&M rattle, especially with that jolt, just gives it a little bit of a bite to it. So it kind of fits in with the theming of the seal yard. So I think that's still a pretty good element of the ride. It does not hurt. And especially with the vest restraints, you don't really get any head banging. Now, a lot of people don't like the vest restraints. These are definitely softer than, say, Valraven's vest restraints. Valraven are definitely a little bit tighter than these. So I would say that they're not bad restraints at all. So if you guys aren't riding it because of the vest restraints, then definitely come and check it out because it's definitely not as tight as, say, Valraven's vest restraints. When you're driving up to this attraction, it is really, really cool to look at because normally when you're driving up to Dorney Park, the first thing you'll see is definitely probably Steel Forest because it is the tallest attraction at Dorney Park. But when you're driving through the pathway, you see Possess right up beside you, so that's really, really cool. So now you have Iron Menace right up beside you, so it is also super, super cool to have 2 attractions, 2 roller coasters right as you are driving into Dorney Park to get you excited. Iron Menace is definitely a super good coaster. I am definitely excited to get some more rides on it this season. It was definitely a good pick for Dorney Park. I know that they were actually deciding if they wanted a wing coaster or a dive coaster, so I'm glad that they picked the dive coaster because it is the newest dive coaster also, and it is actually the only dive coaster in Pennsylvania, which is really, really cool. And Hydra the Revenge, which is also at Dorney Park, is also the only floatless coaster in Pennsylvania. So it is super, super cool to have on the only dive coaster in Pennsylvania and the only floatless coaster in Pennsylvania at Dorney Park. That is probably going to do it for this in-depth review of Iron Menace. It is a super good ride. Definitely go to Dorney Park and check it out for yourself. It is a super good ride. Like I said, I am super excited to get some more rides on it this season. But that is probably going to wrap up our video here. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye, guys.